you grow up with a NES, PlayStation, Star Wars, cartoons, and 80s TV? Do you like to think who would win in a fight between Batman and the Master Chief? Comics, games, movies, music, and TV, they're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. Games, movies, music, and TV, they're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of This Week in Geek. This Week in Geek.
Hello, everybody. We are back with another Loose Cannon. It's been, I think, a little over a month, maybe 5-6 weeks. We had wanted to do this every week or every other week, but life got in the way. Birdman is away. If you've been listening and keeping track on social media, he's had a couple health scares, so he's recovering. It's going to be slow. So I talked to Aaron, and we go, hey, why don't we just start doing some more stuff again? Might not be as frequently as every week, might be as frequently. It all depends on what stuff we have to talk about. So didn't want to go the entire month of April without having an episode. So here we are. So joining me, obviously, is Aaron. Yes, yeah. Hi.
How's it going?
Pretty well overall. It's actually cold today. 2 weeks ago, it was so hot here, and I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but it was in my apartment because they don't turn the heat off until May usually. It was doubly hot, but it was like 32 degrees Celsius in the apartment.
Oh,
and
wow.
I felt like I was dying. I woke up from a sleep in a sweat at 2 a.m. and went, that's it, I'm putting an air conditioner in. And that was, the beginning of April. And then I woke up last night shivering because it had dropped to -4 and we had snow outside.
Yeah, see, it got really cold here too. Supposedly there was going to be snow today. Thankfully there wasn't. And yeah, I was very cold this morning, but it was, I don't know, in Fahrenheit it was 45 in my bedroom, but that's because I had stupidly left the freaking windows open.
Oh, I had left it all the way open, and
so that was like 7 Celsius, and then but the temperature here dropped down to like -4, -5.
Now I'm in a basement apartment of an older 1950s 4-story apartment building, so it's a larger apartment than what you would get normally now. But it's got baseboard heating, but it's boiler room heated, so it isn't overly dry or anything. But again, the heat is on until it's actually on a timer. I think it's May 1st it turns off. It's always on like a low. But even in the winter, usually this place is so well insulated that I have to have the windows open a crack because it'll get too hot. So you can only imagine it was like a sauna in here. And I was like, oh, I'm sweaty, I can't sleep. And then my second thought was, oh my God, my electronics. I don't want... I have TVs, I have computers, I have things that I can't let get this hot.
Yeah, see, I don't really worry about my electronics like that, I guess, but you have better electronics than I do. I have to worry about my fish tank. If it gets too hot, all my saltwater fish die.
Oh, good Lord, that's not good. It's not so much that, it's just where my office sort of setup is, where the internet comes in from the wall and everything. It's on a table, but it's right in front of one of the heat vents. So if the heat is on and it's hot outside, it's not great. So I had to turn last week or the week before, I had to grab a fan and turn a fan on towards it because I was like, I'm just worried about something overheating. And because we're still in lockdown here, we've gone back into a full-blown like April of last year lockdown in Ontario. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute, if let's say something were to die, if my modem dies, I gotta wait for them to mail me something. They can't just come in person. Everything's shut down. So that's why I was a little more nervous than I would normally have been that way. Plus, nobody wants to sleep when they're sweaty and hot. But
oh no, I can't.
I woke up today cocooned up in my covers and didn't realize it. I was like, why am I so cold? And I could see my breath.
Oh man, that's not good. That's not good.
So that's sort of that's what the weather has been like right now. It's like we had rain last week. It was hot, and then we have snow. I've got friends that had like 6 inches of snow.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't make any sense because that's for our American listeners, that is not normal for Ontario. At least not the southern part of Ontario at this time of year at all. Like, yes, we have snow in the winter and we can get fairly deep snow, but generally, once March is gone, you might get like a little bit of drizzle for like one day, but you don't wake up to like, we had more snow today than we had at Christmas.
Yeah, no, you have a climate almost exactly like mine.
Yeah,
here in Michigan. It's almost exactly the same. But the middle of Michigan is a little more extreme than near the coast, since where you are, the lakes actually moderate a little more. See,
yeah.
I'm a climate guy, so I kind of know. I can go into details about how the lakes moderate temperature and lake effect snow and all that.
Yeah, like I've got friends near Niagara Falls and they were hit bad.
Yeah. You get some wicked lake effect snow off that up near there. That in Buffalo, yeah.
But yeah, so that's my end. What have you been up to?
Boy, same old lockdown here as well for the most part. I mean, voluntary lockdown because Michigan's been hit by COVID again and again and again.
Oh wait, did we both get our first vaccinations?
Yeah, we both did, and I get my second next week.
And I have to wait till July 31st because Canada is waiting 4 months between shots because we don't have enough.
Oh man, and that's crazy.
And they're saying it's fine, but still, we got our first shots. That's like, what is it, 75% chance that if you do get COVID, you won't need to be hospitalized.
Yeah.
That's sort of what it's
better than nothing. One of my friends got the Johnson & Johnson shot, and she's all done.
That's the single one, right?
That's the single shot one. She's pretty happy. Obviously, no side effects. Side effects are just, serious side effects are very rare.
Most, like 90% of people I know and family and friends that have got it have gotten the Pfizer shot.
Yeah, that's what I got.
And my one aunt and uncle, I think, just got AstraZeneca.
So yeah, we're hopefully next week we're getting our second shot. Then reenacting season starts,
and that'll be right open for you again. Finally, are you going to have to show that you're vaccinated, or
I'm going to bring my vaccination card with me? But yeah, it's all the fun of reenacting and all the drama, but
but still, you'll have it without the thing in the back of your mind of like, what are these people going to give me?
Yeah, I mean, before COVID hit, I was always worried about that with, sneezing kids and things like that because I just hate getting sick. But,
yeah,
I wouldn't shake hands with anybody. I'd, try always to keep distance even then. But, yeah, now I don't have to worry about dying.
And you usually do, what is it, World War I or II?
I do Soviet World War II.
Okay, it's too bad you couldn't do World War I and just have everybody in masks, everybody in gas masks.
See, I have a gas mask.
Well, then you could go with it.
Yep. I mean, the Soviets all issued gas masks at the beginning of the war because they didn't know if the Germans would use poison gas again. And after the first year, let's say, most soldiers ditched their gas masks, even though they were still issued them, mainly because it was just extra weight. And when you're walking across, thousands of miles, you don't really want to have any extra weight. But yeah, I have original gas mask and original gas mask canisters that still have the asbestos filter in it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's crazy.
That'll save your life in the short term.
In the short term, yeah. I've never cracked the seal on it, but I've worn the gas mask.
So yeah, that's at least cool. Like finally having some outdoor activities again.
Yeah, absolutely. Gonna put the telescope out sooner or later.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Yeah, well, I hate doing it in the cold. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because on the clear nights that when you want to use it, that's when it's the coldest, and electronics don't like it, and the human body doesn't either.
I think for us, we're probably not going to have a lot of outdoor activities for at least a few more months longer than you guys will, just based on the rollout of everything. But for me, the big victory sign will be when movie theaters open up again and I can go. Because I was one of the people that went after the first wave, and we had, like, Canada was doing really well. Like, we're talking, we had zero new cases for like 2 months. Like it was pretty crazy, like August and September. So I went to the movies a couple times. There was it was me and like 2 people because everybody was still afraid to go, and they've been closed ever since. And I know in the States the movie theaters are open again, but they're not open in Canada. So for me, that'll be the sign of victory when the government says, yeah, you can open up theaters because 90% of people are vaccinated or something. So that'll be my treat to myself, and it'll probably be some big dumb movie like Fast and Furious 9 or something.
See, the movie theaters around here aren't open yet, but I think that's voluntary.
Yeah.
One movie theater right now is offering to rent out a whole movie, the whole theater for $100 for like 20 people, and they'll play a list of movies, and they're all older movies, but one of them is Back to the Future, and I'm almost willing to pay $100 for a private screening of Back to the Future on the big screen again.
Well, when's your birthday? That's the question, right?
Not for a while yet. Well,
okay,
at least 3 more months.
I was going to say, you could have done it as a birthday gift for yourself.
Yeah, I might. I mean, I love Back to the Future so much. It's one of my favorite movies.
And I wonder if it's going to be like, because a lot of times those are ones that they've licensed and they're digital copies that are sometimes older. It'd be neat if it's one of the new 4K copies.
See, when on Future Day back in 2015, I went to a theater and they played the entire Back to the Future trilogy back to back, and I had bought the tickets for it, and it was I've never seen Back to the Future that clear, so I assume it was a 4K back then. They
did a 4K restoration for limited theatrical runs, and then they just put out the Blu-rays this past year.
Yeah, so I need to get the Blu-rays now for the new trilogy, but when we saw that on Future Day, you notice things in the acting, whereas even on the DVDs that I have right now, you don't really notice. Like Christopher Lloyd is a treat when you see him on the big. I mean, the way he acts as Doc Brown, just the little gestures or eye movements that he does actually adds to his performance, and you might not even notice that on a DVD.
Oh, totally. My favorite though is when you can see things like where the makeup seam goes for like when they wear toupees and wigs and stuff.
Oh yeah.
The first time I remember ever noticing that was season 1 of Star Trek, the original series, on HD DVD, because I was working retail and they had HD DVD players on display with our fancy new televisions at the time, and that was, I think, the first show released on that format. And it was a few years before the Blu-rays came out, I think. But watching it, and you could see on was it Duhan's hands and a couple other people, you could see when they were smokers, because you could actually see the nicotine stains on their fingers that you wouldn't have seen on any other previous release until they did the remastering. Or whenever you see like a bad toupee or wig on somebody, where you could see where they put that gummy sort of stuff to sort of blend it into their skin.
The spirit gum.
Yeah. That sort of thing is great. And even more recently now, like if you ever watched the original Batman TV show, right? Everybody always laughed at Cesar Romero's mustache still being there. It's so much more visible when it's in HD.
I have that on Blu-ray. I have the original Batman series on Blu-ray. It's so campy, but I love it.
And like you thought it was bad, but you're like, oh, I can see a little bit when you watch it on TV or VHS, but you can see like individual bristles.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's sort of, I guess, going to do it for our little intro here. We've got a couple movies to talk about, and I guess the theme is Fury. Loosely. The Criterion Collection sent over a new release. 1950s The Furies. It was directed by Anthony Mann, and I'll just briefly go into the box and everything they sent over. It's got a cardboard slip box. It has one of those really high quality multi-page booklets inside of it that has like an essay on the film. It's a single disc release with they added some features like interviews with the director's daughter, with some film historians. They included a couple interviews with the director. One was like they're from, it looks like British TV, so it's like pre like BBC having good quality cameras.
Yeah, it's the really low res.
Yeah, was it like 400 lines of resolution or less or whatever they used to have.
Yeah.
So it's got that sort of blurry look. It was not super duper insightful with that, but there was an interview with the main actor that played TC in it, and it was from 1931. And I found it super interesting because, it's before television, and it's from that era where you'd go to the movies, and then maybe either during an intermission or before a movie starts, they would have an interview with an actor that's going to be in some upcoming movie or whoever they wanted to promote.
Yeah.
Similar to, you might have done a radio interview or something, but they would stage them. So it's not just like, hello, I'm so-and-so reporter from whatever news. They would make it out as if it was an actual movie. Like they had an actress pretending to be a reporter who would then go to the house. She knocks, and there's a maid that shows up. It's like, oh, hello, what are you doing here? Like it's if it's like a candid interview. And they're like, come around to the back, and then there's this, like, it's quite obvious it's not his house. It's probably like the movie studio executive's like CEO's home. But
yeah, or it's a set somewhere on a back lot.
Yeah, and he do you have time for an interview? No, I don't. And it's like, and they play it up as if it's this big thing, and like in the persona of what the actor is supposed to be like. The whole idea of Hollywood never letting you know what the actor's really like from that era. And I always find those kind of interviews fascinating. So they did that with him, and it in itself is I almost wish like more interviews were like that, but at the same time, you can see now how phony it was. But I love thinking about how many people would have seen that in theaters and thought this is what the people were actually like.
Yeah,
because they had no other frame of reference back then, right? So they included that, and also this is based on a 1948 novel by Niven Bush. They included the novel in the box.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I've only seen this happen a few times. I told you in a private chat that there was a Robinson Crusoe TV show that aired. I don't know if it aired in the States. It probably did on like Sci-Fi or something, or one of their channels. And the Canadian DVD release of it, not the American one, but the Canadian one, included a copy of the original book as well. And I had that for years, and I thought that was a neat thing to do. Like if your property is based on a popular novel and you can get the rights to it, why not include it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because a paperback edition is going to cost you what, $10-15? If
Yeah.
you're already, this I think retails for $30 American, so $40 Canadian. If you can get the rights to it, why not include it? So I thought that's kind of a neat bonus feature. And interestingly enough, on Criterion's website, they don't list the book as being a feature on the ad for it. So you won't even know that it's there necessarily unless you pick it up.
See, Darlene and I have watched a few old B movies for our Earth versus Soup podcast,
which you guys have been super busy on.
yeah, we've been recording a lot, but one of them was, and I think it's already been released, The Navy versus the Night Monsters, and it was based on a book. And how I wish that would have been like a nice little package. Like, here's the movie with Mimi Van Doren and Anthony Easley, and then have The Monster from Earth's End by Murray Leinster in it. I mean, now Darlene and I obviously bought that so we could read it, and the book is actually really cool, but I wish more movies were like that.
Yeah, you know what? Especially if you're going back to like the 30s and 40s, like pulp dime novels.
Yeah.
How many movies were adapted from these pulp novels that would see a whole new light if they could have just included? Like, if you're already spending, like, not on a bargain bin release, obviously, but if you're already going to spend $20-30 on a DVD release, why not include the book? Maybe increase the price by $5, and that would be something for the collectors to put on their shelves. So I do commend them for this. So getting into the movie, I will say, like, watching some of the behind the scenes, there's a little bit of context around it. The summary, the too long didn't read, is it's about the Arizona territory at a time when it was lawless and everybody in it was terrible.
Yeah. It's about this rancher. His name is like TC, and he's just a bastard. He's a really powerful bastard, and no one really calls him out on any of his crap for years. And his daughter's kind of an awful human being as well. God, how do I even describe this plot without being like negative on the characters? Because
it's about people that are very selfish, all trying to vie for land, property, and power.
Yeah, that's basically what it's about. And everyone does awful things to each other in this movie. And since it's 1950, they only hint at some of the awful things that they do. And I was thinking about this. They insinuate there's sexual blackmail going on.
Yeah, now I haven't had a chance, obviously, to read the novel yet, but I would get the feeling that the book might be a little... I mean, there's still censorship back then, a lot more than there is now, but I feel like it might be a little more implied in novelization form. So
it might be. It was really subtle in the film, but I was like, oh my God, that's what's going on? It was right in the beginning of the film where TC's blackmailing the mortgage guy.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that was really well done, at least, in that if you were a kid watching this back then, like, hey, all kids loved watching Westerns back then, it would have gone right over them. But it was clear as day to me.
This would, I think, have been the kid. This wouldn't have been your John Wayne bring the kids to the movies, Roy Rogers, Randolph Scott kind of Western.
Oh, I agree. No way.
This is sort of a precursor to the revisionist westerns, like a Sam Peckinpah, but not as violent, and sort of the stuff you might see from almost 20 years later, only done within the constraints of what they could do in 1950.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of violence in this movie, but it's not bloody violence.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's kind of like off screen or implied.
Yeah, there's with TC, there's a hint of menace in everything he does.
Yeah.
So, like when he arrives home and he's, everything's braggadocious. Everything is, look how great I am, look how great I am. And he goes up and touches the portrait of himself that he's bragging about, sees that there's dust on there. And you were thinking almost immediately, everybody goes silent. You're thinking he's going to just beat the crap out of his maid.
Yeah.
But instead, he's just like, he just lets her go. But there's always the thought of at any moment he could snap, and then he goes back to being jovial and happy. So you're walking on eggshells with him and his entire family. Yeah,
and I mean, you're walking on eggshells with the casino owner, who seems to just kind of come out of nowhere and then does awful things to the daughter. Vance? Her name's Vance.
Yeah.
There's the people that are squatting on their territory, which I think are actually like the only halfway decent people in this. Being that like they actually have mercy and decide not to kill people. Like, I don't know, man. This movie was beautifully shot.
Yeah, it's black and white photography. It's very well done. The remastering's is good on it, because I watched the trailer for it and I saw clips that people have put on YouTube for it from back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's quite clear they've done a lot. It's not in this. It gets a Paramount picture, but it's not in the same condition, I think, or might not have been stored in the same condition that some of like the more prestige stuff that you would see from John Wayne. So like some of the stuff that he did, you're like, wow, why does that look like it was filmed today? Well, it's because they were considered extremely valuable. I think this is one of those films that at the time they tried to market it like it was this next big showpiece for drama, and also they tried to make it sound bigger than it was. I think it's gained legs later on, more so in like the film critic circles.
Yeah, because I can see why a film critic might like this, because there's a lot of complex character interaction going on. It's a very well-made film. It's beautiful. It's
believably acted. A lot of acting at that time still came across as Hollywood phony.
Yeah.
And people seem a little more natural, even if they're larger than life. They do come across as being a little more
real.
Exactly.
Yeah, my only criticism is that all the characters are generally just awful human beings.
The closest thing I can say to that, as far as movies I've seen that I personally really like, that where every character is kind of an asshole and terrible, is To Live and Die in L.A., movie from the mid-'80s, where you watch that film, and I don't know if you've seen it, but every character, and I ended up loving it because it's just a well-made movie. William Friedkin, I think, is the director of it, or is it Walter Hill? One of those two. Where by the end of the movie, you're like, wait, who am I supposed to like? Everybody's evil.
Yeah.
And that worked for the 80s generation, I think, better than it would have worked in the 50s, obviously.
Yeah, I don't see how this could have worked in the 50s, because everyone is really wanting to have a hero in these movies. They want to have somebody that they want to root for.
I wasn't, a big fan of the ending. Like, it's sort of and I mean, we can spoil it now. I mean, the movie's a million years old at this point, and it's been talked to death on, online over the years. Anyway, TC gets his comeuppance. Yeah. But at the very end, it ends on like a happy ending where everybody's like, and we're going to dedicate it, like they're going to dedicate this new sign and ranch to him. And all. It's like, why? Didn't you hate him?
Yeah, you just spent like a year traveling the Southwest, screwing him over because he just killed a man that you were good friends with, by hanging him.
Yeah.
And you said you'd never forgive him. And
it has the Hollywood smile ending.
Yeah, it's like
they wrap it up in 1 minute.
What the hell just happened? Like,
something there tells me, and again, I'll have to read the book, but something there tells me somebody at Paramount went, no, we don't end movies on a sour note.
Yeah, like it felt like at the end I would have been. What I was expecting was TC to literally kill his own daughter. Just to offer, because he's his whole life has been ruined. As awful as that life was with how he treated people, but still, like all of my pain and suffering for the past however long has been because of my daughter, and now she just one-upped me so much. It
would have been interesting to see it end with him killing her, and then it ends with him showing up in another territory, not Arizona but somewhere else, because it's the old West where news didn't necessarily travel, showing up at another house and he's got a whole other family.
Yeah, that would have made sense.
And you could have been like, wow, he is a fucking bastard.
Yeah, but it would have still just been as bad, like as how I enjoyed it. I mean, it would have been a little more interesting that way. But
yeah. So, I mean, in conclusion, my point, it is, I can see, historically significant. They did go into, when I was reading and watching some of the features, how the director was trying to make his take on like Shakespeare or a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
And they can go into it, and I can see that.
Sure.
He specifically called it Furies because he wanted to evoke, I think it was it Irish or something? Had to do with, it was Irish or whatever culture it was, that the Furies are vengeful spirits that basically cause conflict between people and families. And the idea was that he wanted to give the air that there might be some sort of intervention bringing them closer to ruin.
Well, you're talking, it is Greco-Roman. I mean, because then if you're talking about Furies being chaos and spirits that cause mischief, it
was something like that. And he was blending it with a bunch of other things together, and it was like, I see it, but I don't see it to the extent that they were trying. I can see when they made the case for it, I'm like, okay, I can see that. I don't know that it necessarily portrayed it, at least in my eyes, that well. I do think it's worth a watch. I think as far as a collection, like what coming with the book and everything, if you're a big Western collector, cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I just don't think this is one you're going to watch with your family.
No, you see, when I was watching this, one of the two different things that my dad used to watch all the time were, old science fiction movies and Westerns. And I'm sure he watched this, and all the way through it, I was going, well, I'm sure my dad loved this. I'm sure he loved this, but what did he see in it? Like, it's pretty.
It might have been that it was so different. Yeah, I think it was progressive in that it wasn't following the Hollywood formula.
Yeah, and nothing afterwards followed this really well in the same mold, I should say.
Yeah, the whole dour or complicated protagonist, that wasn't really until like the spaghetti westerns popped up in the 60s and 70s, and then the revisionist stuff that happened with Eastwood.
Yeah. So I mean, it's fairly unique in that regard, and as you said, I agree. I can see why people think this is an important film. It's not for me, I guess.
Yeah, it's not your kid's western. It's also not, if you're a big John Wayne fan, this is not the kind of one that you would watch.
Yeah, but it was very well acted. That's for sure.
Yeah, a cut above a lot from the time.
Yeah.
So I'll give it that. So I guess we'll move on to the second Fury movie, and this is one that I wanted to do, and I had been holding off because I was sent the discs a while ago, but with Birdman being ill, I tried to have it so he could watch it with us, but I figured, you know what, screw it. We're doing the Furies. We may as well do Blind Fury. Now this,
thank you.
and I'm glad you watched it in this order, because I was going to tell you, watch Blind Fury after.
Yeah, because it's grim in its own way, but my God, is it uplifting in the end, I guess.
So I can give a bit of background on this. I saw Blind Fury early 90s, I think, on TV here.
Okay.
And so I would have been like a kid in grade school. And then I ended up renting it on VHS and then DVD, as a teenager, and it became one of my favorite, like, unsung heroes of 80s action movies. I think I got into it again as a teenager, right when I started watching a lot of the Canon Films ninja films, like Enter the Ninja or Revenge of the
Ninja 3, and then
so those all starred Sho Kosugi, who has a cameo guest as a bad guy in this. So that was sort of around the time I would go to my local video store and pick it up, and there was about a 10-year gap where I remember seeing it as a kid and then forgetting it existed, and then getting it on VHS and DVD to rent. So this is from the weird time period between like 1987 and 1993, where Dutch actor Rutger Hauer was became a lead good guy action star in theatrical features. He did about 4 or 5 of them, and prior to that, he was known primarily for his dramatic acting in Dutch films, as well as Blade Runner being his breakout American role. Prior to that, he had played a bad guy serial killer in Nighthawks, a pretty much unknown Stallone movie from like 81 or something. Good movie overall, but I think almost nobody's seen it. Well,
I haven't seen it in a long time. I barely remember it, but
if anything, you'll remember that Stallone at one point, I believe, goes undercover, dresses a woman in it.
Yeah, there's cross-dressing.
Yeah. At a time when it was like, oh no, he did that. It's like, so people do that all the time. But at the time, 1981, it was considered woo.
Bitchy.
Yeah. So he does Blade Runner, that's his breakout. Does a couple films here and there that to varying degrees of success. Flesh and Blood, underrated Paul Verhoeven movie. Dark movie, obviously. Well, Paul Verhoeven doesn't do any movies that aren't dark.
Yeah.
And then he does The Hitcher as the main bad guy in that, which is sort of a cult classic. And then they flip a switch and they go, let's make him an action star, a good guy action star. So he does Wanted Dead or Alive, which we should definitely cover sometime on the show.
Oh, sure. 1986, yeah.
Yeah, that's if I remember correctly, it's been a while. I think Gene Simmons from Kiss plays a Middle Eastern terrorist in it, and he tries to stop him. And Rutger Hauer is supposed to be, I think, like it's either great or great grandson of Steve McQueen's character from the TV show in the 50s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is actually officially tied together with that.
Wow.
And then he does this movie, Blind Fury, a movie called Blood of Heroes, I think, Past Midnight, and Split Second. Those were his, good guy action movies. And then he plays a bad guy for almost the rest of his career until he did the Canadian movie Hobo with a Shotgun, where he came back to being a good guy for one film. So people mostly know him as this character actor bad guy. Well, I would say Blind Fury is probably the pinnacle of his good guy theatrical run that he did. And here's the basic background. Now, it's from an era when we still had a lot of movies coming out with Vietnam as the backdrop or the backstory. So it's late 60s. A platoon in Vietnam gets obliterated. There is apparently one, but there we find out there's 2 survivors. One survivor, and he's blinded. And Rutger Hauer is that character. He then gets trained and to live and learn how to use his other senses and become a martial artist by the Vietnamese village that takes him in. And
which I thought was a really cool, like, montage-ish scene right in the beginning.
It was actually pretty well done. And the basic plot is he goes back home, tries to meet up with whomever survived. He finds out one of his friends had, and then gets embroiled in a kidnapping plot where they try to kidnap the son of his friend to force his friend to cook them drugs a la Breaking Bad.
Oh, and yeah, the drugs, it looks to me like that's just copper sulfate crystals, but yeah, I think it's supposed to be like super meth.
Yeah, the idea was to... I think they abandoned it partway through and they made it out to be that they're just selling it to whatever buyers. But early in the film, they hint that they're going to serve it to the people in their casinos to make them stay longer.
Yeah.
But they never actually, like, later on, it's shown that they're just trying to sell to, like, these Florida buyers or something.
Yeah, there's like a guy that just kind of walks out at one point.
Yeah, there is, as far as I can tell, I've done a little research, a lot that was cut. This movie was like an hour and 45 minutes, and the final version's an hour and 22 or 23. So there's a couple things, we'll get into that as we get to the end, that I can tell where they made a cut. But this is one of those quintessential late 80s, like, weird hybrid comedy action films that you can tell it's trying to be funny, and it actually works in some cases. So the opening is more serious and dark, where obviously he's injured, and
yes,
and how he's trained to use his senses is interesting, right? Like, they train him to cut melons with a sword, and listen to his surroundings, and it was neat how it showed how subtly he was slowly becoming sort of adopted into the community there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we flash forward, it's 20 years later, it's 1989, and he's walking at the side of a highway. He somehow made it home. Probably, I guess you're to assume he came by boat.
Yeah, I assume he flew in. Well, I mean, he's in Florida, right? At the beginning of the film.
Yeah, but he had no money or anything. But it's
he got to the United States somehow. It doesn't seem like he's been in the U.S. for very long, but maybe just a little bit of time. Who knows? But yeah, he's just walking down a road in Florida and has to step over an alligator and all that. But that whole scene shows really well, like, that he's actually able to navigate fairly well with his ears, just listening and feeling around with his cane/sword. And
it has such a, it's not quite goofy, but a little bit goofy soundtrack. Whenever his theme, his I'm trying to think of the motif that they're playing. It's like it's not, it's like something you might hear in an Ernest movie.
Yeah, it's a little goofy. But that's okay. I think it actually works.
But it shows, like, they show pretty much right away that, oh man, the tone has changed. It's now going to be a comedy, because he steps over the poop when he can sense that it's there, and then he comes up to an alligator.
He's like, "Good doggy."
Nice doggy. I mean, it's like, so it shows that at some points he has this brilliant sort of sixth sense of his surroundings, but then he'll be a little bit of a goofball with that. He goes to visit his army buddy, who he was apparently best friends with in that platoon before everything went to shit. Meets with his army buddy's ex-wife and kid, and talk about small role for her.
I recognized her right away.
Yeah,
Meg Foster.
Yeah, and she still does stuff now. Granted, she plays a lot of times witches and like evil people now, because she has those striking eyes still.
Yes.
She's one of those actresses where, if not necessarily from voice, not necessarily from the rest of her looks, like, she was obviously a very pretty lady, but she had those eyes that were like, holy crap, they pierced you like a hawk.
Yeah. See, I remember her from They Live. That's where and Evil Lynn from the Masters of the Universe movie, just because of her eyes. And yeah, her eyes are just.
So she's almost too good of an actress to be in this for such a short period of time.
Yeah, because she really is a good actress. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so she plays it, and she realizes obviously that he's blind right away. And I should mention that as he's approaching the house, the son of his friend tosses a little dinosaur that he had made out of clay or something that he carved his name into out of the window, and our main character catches it, and even though he shouldn't be able to hear it, didn't seem to make a sound. But anyway, walks in, introduces himself. She decides to go make him some tea, and the son decides to play pranks on him and play tricks on him because he's a little shit, as lots of little kids are.
Yeah.
And tries to play some games on him and does not go well for him. freaks the kid out a bit, and before we know it, there's a knock at the door, and the bad guys have come to kidnap potentially her and the son. Some cops, I guess dirty cops, were hired to make the escort, and we start to see the first bit of where this switches again to being it's a comedy, but then there's dismemberment.
Yeah, there's some pretty intense violence in this.
He chops off a cop's hand,
Yeah.
But then they won't show the blood from slashes on them. You know what I mean? It's he'll chop off a hand, but there won't be spraying blood or anything.
Yeah, I think they try to hide the really awful blood just to keep the rating down.
I have a feeling this is where we start to see some cuts that were made. It seems like there's some abrupt cuts away from what they would have maybe lingered on a bit.
And here's the thing: this movie's still rated R. They could have shown a lot of blood.
Yeah, up here in Canada, it's PG-13, but at the same time, they could have shown more, I think.
Yeah, they could have. There was one point where it's the fight in the cornfield that the big bad guy.
There's a B plot in there that's just gone.
Oh, there is, really.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, so in that first part of the house, the mother gets shot and dies. There's a fight with who ends up being the big, bad guy henchman, who I recognize from Ernest Goes to Jail as his bunkmate, who ends up saving him at the end.
Oh, okay.
I think he goes by, is it Tex Cobb or something?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. He was in Raising Arizona. That's where I remember.
Big goon, is in a lot of stuff. Big burly beard. Better actor than he lets on. He gets away. The cops both die. The mother dies. The kid's knocked out. He decides to take the kid, and he's like, I'm going to take you to see your father, because he promised the mother he'd take care of him. They decide to get on a bus together, and they sort of learn to get along and become closer. And this is where we see the montage, the reveal of what happened in Vietnam, and through some misadventure, they end up missing their bus when they were in, what was it, Kansas or something?
Well, it's not that they missed the bus. It's that Rutger Hauer tells the kid that his mom was killed.
That's right.
And he freaks out and runs into the cornfield. But that's when this whole pickup truck filled with hillbillies, armed with Uzis and shotguns, is just out in the open. And
I love 80s henchmen, because it's a hillbilly. He's got these they'll have a face that looks completely normal, but the filthiest hands you've ever seen in your life, they've just painted them black with filth, and he's just munching on popcorn.
Yeah, he's just num num num. Yeah, but it's ridiculous that these guys are just. It's not ridiculous that there's people that roam around in their pickup trucks armed. That's not ridiculous. This is the United States. Everyone's armed, right?
It's supposed to be Kansas or something, so of course.
Yeah, but it's weird that these guys are clearly hired help. And they might be disguised, but there's also people with them that aren't local. So you'd think that a local sheriff or whatever would be this pickup truck filled with armed,
with 8 people with guns.
8 people, yeah, and it's not with shotguns, but openly wielding Uzis.
Yes, yeah. We're not talking stuff that a farmer would have. We're not talking rifles. Or even if it was handguns, depending on the state, I'd be okay, I understand it. No, they have long rifles and Uzis and stuff that you would not expect them to necessarily be carrying.
Slag has a freaking Desert Eagle. It's crazy.
And they're there's a fight in the cornhusk, and it is a moment to show. It's almost a little bit like the Jackie Chan style of humor.
Yeah,
for the action, which he wouldn't really make it out big in the States until a few years after this. But it's that sort of using the environment as part of the physical comedy.
Yeah, that cornfield scene was actually really good. I thought it was very well done, and I immediately thought, boy, they're just as blind as he is in that cornfield. I don't know how many cornfields you've been in, but
I've been in a few. I've been in a couple mazes.
It's honestly hard to see, any direction.
Well, and they do make a cut where I'm like, there's more that was supposed to happen here, and you can tell. And it's right after a bunch of them get shot. There's the two guys with the, I guess, sort of semi-leader lady who with all their guns, and she goes, "What the fuck is going on in here?"
Yeah,
and then they're never seen again.
Huh? Yeah,
they don't turn away and run. They don't get shot. You don't see them. It just abruptly cuts, and I have a feeling there was more deaths.
Okay,
and
I believe it.
And also, I did read that they had to make some cuts. They didn't say what specifically to make their rating. I think it might be because I'll bet you that he killed her on camera, and they didn't want a woman being shot on camera after the mother was shot. Because this is back when they still had a lot of arbitrary rules that violence against women would get higher ratings with the MPAA ratings board.
Because, I mean, like I said, MPAA says this is R already. So,
do you think they might have just given it? They might have gone, nope, you got an NC-17 because you've hurt too many women in this film.
The NC-17, to get an NC-17, you have to be pretty heinous. Because, I mean, look at the Saw films.
Well, this is nowadays though. We're thinking this would have been rated in '88.
Let me think if I can figure out
this is
89.
So they would have been submitting in '88. So this is right after Paul Verhoeven did RoboCop, and the battle he went through to get it down to an R.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say RoboCop is way more violent than this.
RoboCop, he's blasting off body parts, and you're seeing it happen on screen. So yeah,
there's a guy that dances for like 30 seconds as ED 409, whatever.
Yeah,
just unloads into him.
Yeah, people get shot in the head. You see the bullet enter and exit. There's a lot of stuff in there that it's understandable why they got it. People get shot in the crotch. So I get it, but it might have been. Who knows? It could be a bad day when they submitted too, but it looks like it was not cut for time because 90 to 99 minutes is the standard length for these kind of movies, and this is about 85. So sure. I have a feeling that maybe stylistically they chose to. Maybe they didn't want to dwell on the violence. They wanted to keep it a little more lively with the comedy because I could see how certain aspects of this could have been edited for television without having to change much and still maintain that 2-hour time slot. Okay.
So same year, Roadhouse. Roadhouse is pretty damn violent.
Yeah, which weird thing, never seen it.
You've never seen Roadhouse? Okay, see,
I know.
I love Roadhouse.
I have to see. Was it 3 movies I have to see that everybody gets on me for that I still haven't seen? I haven't seen Roadhouse. I haven't seen The Goonies all the way through, and I haven't seen Adventures in Babysitting.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I know, right? And yet I've seen everything else.
Yeah, Goonies is one of the go-to films for my wife and I when we have a kid that we're taking care of for foster care.
I know things that happen. I've seen clips and everything. I've just never actually sat through the whole thing.
Oh yeah, great.
So anyway, I should definitely.
We're going away from.
Yes. So Blind Fury, again, a little more comedy. There's where the comedy really picks up is when they make it to Reno.
Oh yeah.
So they make it to Reno and. Through more misadventure, the 2 henchmen that when they make it to Reno that kidnap them and throw them in the back of the van, they're goofy as all hell.
Oh, they are. One is
John Cassavetes' son, the famous director and actor's son, Nick Cassavetes, which I've seen him in later films. I just didn't recognize him in that until I saw the credits, and. They are goofy. They get into a fight in the van. They free them. Oh, the scene where they're driving, and he cuts his finger on the sword and gets the woman to try to lick it clean. Yeah, was so overacted, over the top, ridiculous that I actually started laughing.
Yeah. Oh no, that everything in the car was really funny. Just because you have to be, these guys have to be idiots.
Oh yeah,
Like they figured out how to like ambush this guy when he came to Reno to find, his friend and give him his son. They were smart enough for that, but then they like put them in the van where they can't watch them.
yeah,
And they know this guy's like a Vietnam vet and hardcore, and he's been out there killing everybody. And we'll just put him back there with a kid, no
yeah.
problem. And there's like all this rumbling around as they're jumping around and falling over each other to try to, squirm out of their restraints.
Yeah, and they end up they find their way out. They set the back of the van on fire. They escape, and in the process of retrieving retrieving his sword, which was a smart way to do it, it gets thrown out the window, and then he starts counting. He goes count up, so they backtrack to where they were, which is basic logic, but it's nice to see a movie that's this dumb have that kind of logic in it. And they end up stepping on the girl's glasses, so now she can't drive. So he's like, good, I'll drive. And we've got a blind man driving. In the meantime, the two goofballs flag down a couple old ladies in a really big car.
Yeah, it's a land yacht.
Yeah, they basically carjack them, throw them out, and as they're driving away, the one old lady yells, "Kill them!" And the other lady pulls out a gun that looks like it's the size of the gun that the Joker used in Batman '89, and just fires at the car a bunch of times. And the one guy, goofball driving the car, says, "See, that's why I always vote for gun control."
Yeah,
and then it just cuts to the next scene.
Funny. That was really funny. Yeah, no, there were a lot of weird guns in this film. There were a lot.
Yeah, and that's why I thought Mike would get a kick out of it too. But he'll have to watch it some other time. And they're driving into town, and he's basically being, driving and swerving all around, hits the side of another car, and the guy goes, "What, are you blind?" And he turns and goes, "Yeah. What's your excuse?"
Yeah.
And
it's the classic like 1980s double take or whatever that the guy does. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Holy shit! And he puts on the brakes. Yeah, and then of course they almost crash, but come within half an inch of the wall.
Yeah, I actually like that entire scene. And, obviously they really were filming in Reno.
Yeah.
And I guess there was like an actual accident that happened in one of the stunt takes that they just kept in the film, where two cars smack into each other.
Oh,
and they weren't planning on it. It's really brief. It's not like it's an extreme crash, but I guess it was an accident.
No, you can see. Yeah, you can tell. And then it has the classic car flipping scene.
Yeah, where it just one car ramps up on another one impossibly, and then it just flips.
Flies about 20 feet in the air.
Yeah.
And then we're in. Around this point, the main bad guy that's trying to get the friend to make the drugs decides that he's like, I want a professional in here. Get me Bruce Lee.
Sir, Bruce Lee's dead.
All right, get me his brother.
Give me his brother. I don't care what it costs. Give me his brother.
Okay. And we have a siege at the casino where the blind man somehow is winning everything at first.
It's because he's like listening to how the ball is clicking in the roulette wheel, and I think that's a little weird, but
yeah, or it's just it's that, or it seems like it's implied that he's just, oh, I get it now, blind luck.
Yeah.
So that's the joke. There's the joke, right?
Yeah.
And then it turns out that it's rigged, and they have balls that can be controlled by a computer, and yada yada yada, and it starts a big fight and riot, and one of the henchman shows up, and I recognized him because he's an old pro wrestler from like the 70s.
Yeah.
And he makes his way in to help his friend escape. They have their touching reunion, and the little bit of foreshadowing or backstory they gave on his, like, Rutger Hauer's character was the scout infantryman / sharpshooter, so hence he loses his sight, and then now he's in another way he's had to come to terms with that, whereas his friend was the munitions expert, demolition expert. So they decide to destroy the lab and escape, and there's some cool sort of shootouts there, and then we have an entire, for no reason at all, for the last 10 minutes of the film, a change of scenery to a ski resort. I didn't know they
Yeah.
had that there in Nevada.
Well, yeah, up in the mountains. Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
there's skiing in Nevada. Absolutely. I mean, I haven't been to that part of Nevada. The only place I've been is like Area 51 and Las Vegas. But yeah, there's mountains that you can ski in the winter.
And
it's
we have
over by California.
Okay, so I guess that makes sense then. So they have their final showdown where it's the two Vietnam vet buddies, going to go save the day, and they do work together quite well. It shows how they're like complementing each other in their performance and attacks at first. Then they get separated, and there's a little more comedy. There's a cool scene where he's in the music room, and like the microphones and stuff are on. He's hitting drums and that, and he's completely thrown off his bass. And for a little bit, you can see for the first time since the very beginning of the movie, Rutger Hauer looks panicked because he can't get his bearings because there's too much noise around him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then he's surrounded. He's going to be shot, and then his friend comes in and kills the power to the room, so they're all blinded. And then we have the cool sort of shootout where it's another way where they can have a lot of violence happen where you don't have to see too much blood or anything. And there's a couple, funny moments in there where the guy's like, I can't see anything. And the guy's like, neither can I. Bam. They slash each other up. And we have the final showdown. Oh, here's where the other part where I know something was cut.
Okay.
The drug dealers that decide they're like bailing, like, screw it, we're done. They're leaving.
And they just leave.
They just leave, and the henchman, the big guy from the beginning of the film, is told to go after them and finish them.
Yeah, and you see nothing,
or you know what to do. You hear nothing, you see nothing. There's nothing resolved from that. There is obviously a scene where they get killed, but they're not ever shown, and there's no reason. Like, it didn't make sense as to why. Why did they even have to be in the movie if they weren't going to show them get killed?
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. That's the one bit that I was a little confused about.
What I was hoping, and it might have been in the works, it would have been interesting if it turns out that those guys were actually undercover DEA agents.
That would have been interesting.
And like maybe they could have been like, oh, and then had the whole building come in. There's like 30 or 40 bad guys, but those guys, one of them gets shot, one of them makes it out to the lobby, and he could have just called for backup, and then they could have swooped in, and that's how they could have gotten out of that situation.
Yes.
But it just, there needed to be more to that C plot that didn't seem to be there. But this is where Shokasuji comes in and they have their sword fight, and I loved how they were getting ready. I think at one point, at first he's going to shoot him, and he's like, "No, I paid too much to not watch this happen."
Yeah.
And the big bad guy, the hefty burly guy, they have sort of a fight at the part there. He gets slashed, and then he gets slashed through the stomach, out the window.
Yeah.
Then his body splits in half, and he falls to his death, a la the bad guy from RoboCop at the end.
Yeah, that was the one point in this movie that I thought broke. I don't know. It took me out of the movie because the special effect actually did not look good.
It looked like a special effect from 20 years earlier.
Yes, it did not look good. It took me out of the movie, and I was like, "Oh, wait a second! You could have just shown him falling backwards out the window, and then like him kicking the legs out the window like a minute later. Like, oh wait, this guy fell in two parts or something like that.
What would have worked too is if he smashed him up against the window and then slashed, and then if you had just not even seen his body, if you just saw a head falling down out of in the distance out of the window,
yeah,
you could have been like, holy crap, he decapitated him right out of the window.
Yeah,
but instead they had a hand drawn sort of.
It was cartoony, yeah, very cartoony. Yeah,
but it was like, okay, cool. Then there's the big fight with Shokasuji, and it's over a hot tub, and there's a misadventure.
Well, it's a lesson to be learned about why the breakers are great to have in your bathroom. Why GFI circuits are great because electronics. It's like lighting gets dropped into the hot tub and it just starts shorting out, and no breakers pop, nothing like that. So it's just an electrified pool of water.
They list Shokuzuji as like the third or fourth person in the credits at the beginning of the film, and he's in the movie for like 2 minutes.
But man, when he's in the movie, he's there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like, oh, who'd they use for a stunt double? Nobody. He's the stunt guy for a lot of movies, especially back then. He was like, if back in the day, prior to a lot of the modern martial arts stunts coordinators, if it was an American film, you basically in the 70s and 80s had him doing most of it for almost everybody. Like even when you'd be like, oh, you'd have somebody like, well, Bruce Lee did his own back in the day, and you'd have Chuck Norris that he would give some advice. But generally, if you had somebody in a ninja suit or you needed a stunt double for an Asian martial artist, it was pretty much him. And then because of how good he was, that's why he got to star in some of those canon films, because they realized, hey, why can't we just use him? So this was sort of near the end of that peak he had from like 1980 to 87. He did a ton of American ninja movies.
Yes. So. Ninja 3, The Domination from 1984. Peak. I love that movie.
Oh, God. Yeah. That one I haven't seen in years.
That's like the weird laser sword that comes out of the video game.
Oh, that's right.
God, I love that. That's an amazing B movie.
But yeah, he did Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, Ninja 3 of Domination, 9 Deaths of the Ninja, Pray for Death, Rage of Honor, Black Eagle, which is an underrated Van Damme movie they did together. Then this one, and he didn't really do much other than like stunt coordination and stuff until he appeared in, I think it was Ninja Assassin or something like 10 years ago. So, and that was just more of a homage to him and have him come back, but he was the unofficial king of the ninja movie back in the day.
Yes.
So, we end up with, sort of a happy ending where everybody, they're going to go live in San Francisco together, which is kind of weird. Kid's mom dies, and within 3 days, he's now got a new mom.
It's like the old assistant or something like that.
She worked at the casino, I think, as a pit boss.
Oh, well, was it a pit boss or was she like a waitress or something like that?
Well, she's the one that was she was the dealer. She was the dealer at the table, but became friends with the father or boyfriend, girlfriend.
Because if you go to Vegas or anything like that, the different uniform types that you have, generally the women that are dealers have less revealing clothes than the women that are the waitresses that come around for your drinks. Well, and if you're a pit boss, you wear a dress suit. So when she was first shown, it was like, okay, she has a bunny bottom on.
Yeah, but then she says when she talks to Rutger Hauer, she says that she was his dealer.
Yeah.
So maybe she did multiple duties, whatever they. Well, she sounds like she was working as a slave, basically, for them.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, she's like the new mom. Yeah,
and they're inviting Rutger Hauer, who I don't think we've mentioned it. His character's name is Nick Parker. It looks like they're inviting him to. They're all going to live together in a house.
Yeah,
but then he decides, nope, he's going to go the whole kung fu way and travel the earth.
And I thought that was interesting. I didn't not like it. I thought that was just an interesting take.
Maybe he realized that he was going to search out other people or help out whoever he can, and he goes, and the kid comes after him and. Gets mad that he feels abandoned, and then I hate you, blah blah blah, and he throws the dinosaur from the beginning, and Nick catches it, and for some reason, I'm surprised. Well, I guess it's back in the day before they had to keep schedules. The what was it called, transatlantic bus or whatever they called it?
Yeah,
this pulls up and they let him on again. They start driving away, and Nick walks away at the end of the film with his arm in a sling, and he's got the dinosaur with him, and it plays his music, and he smiles.
Mm-hmm. He's done his duty here.
They were setting it up to have a sequel. Clearly,
oh sure, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I could have seen this have, I could have seen this do well as a TV show, if not for a couple of years later we had Kung Fu Legend Continues.
Sure, yeah,
it could have been the same thing.
I think it would have been better as like just a series of low budget movies.
Yeah, like if Canon Pictures, like this was released by TriStar, it feels like a Canon movie. Yeah,
it does. I really enjoyed this movie. I had a fun time watching it. I thought the comedy was a little cheesy. That's fine, but it was day and night from the Furies.
And this is from an era when you could make a movie on a very low budget, but the talent involved was so good that it could look more expensive than it was. This movie only had a $2 million budget.
$2 million.
Yeah,
I thought it was more than that.
It made 2.6, so maybe it wasn't considered successful enough.
Okay, because I thought I had read somewhere that it was 10 million budget.
It was it apparently, or sorry, it was 10, and it came in at 2 million under budget, so it was 8 million.
Okay.
So it made its money back, obviously, in the video market, but they were probably hoping for him to do a lot more with it than from the sounds of it.
Yeah.
The director has gone on, like, some of these 80s like low budget action films, they didn't really get like the directors didn't really do much after, or they were stuck doing TV. But the year that this came out, the director did 2 movies. He did this and Dead Calm, which is Sam Neill, Nicole Kidman, Billy Zane, the creepy boat murder one.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then he did Clear and Present Danger, Patriot Games, The Saint, Bone Collector, The Giver, and then most recently something called Above Suspicion.
I really liked The Saint. I think not a lot of people give it.
Yeah. So this is a guy who went on to do big things, even though this wasn't a huge initial success. But reading into it on a lot of sites, it did become throughout the 90s one of the biggest like action movie rental films, and it ended up making in upwards of 50 million or more just in video rental sales.
I could see that being big in the.
Think about this as a double feature. Like if you had thrown this on with like a Chuck Norris movie as a double feature.
Oh yeah, like Invasion USA or something like that.
Yeah, or like Hero and the Terror, or you could throw this on with like one of his Missing in Action movies or something.
Sure, I could even see this as like, hey, let's pair it with an Andy Sedaris film.
And that was when I was trying to sell you on it. I'm like, it's that, but not exactly like that.
Yeah, because I see what you're saying with like the comedy being a little cheeky.
The music especially too.
Yeah, the music, but not the weird action.
It was like
more of a standard action for like, I don't know, martial arts action.
It's almost like, what if somebody worked as a production assistant on one of Sedaris' films and then got his break to make a Hollywood movie?
Yeah. No,
so,
I can see that. Yeah.
It's got a Rotten Tomato score of 53%. This should be higher than that. It's not going to be this universally loved film, but as far as 80s action films that I think almost nobody has seen, this is probably one of the best you're going to be able to pick up. Now, the Blu-ray has no features on it. I think it has a theatrical trailer. That's it. It's one of those ones that comes in like a slip box to make it look like an old VHS rental, which is kind of neat.
That's cool.
But you can pick the movie up for like $7 or $10.
Yeah, it's worth it. It is worth it, folks.
I watch it not all the time, but like every couple of years. It's one of my go-tos if it's a rainy day or if I'm not feeling great. I'll just throw it on with a few other films in a row. And it is weird because Rutger Hauer is mostly known for being a dramatic actor or playing a bad guy. But he pulled it off quite well, and his accent wasn't really too thick or anything. That's one advantage, I guess, the Dutch have, is they can seem to meld themselves into having an American accent pretty well.
Yeah, and I was going to say it's really interesting to see him as a good guy, and he really does pull it off. I wish he did that more. I wish he was a leading man more often.
And there were some weird moments, like so I was like, we're almost approaching Stranger Danger quality. Where he's like sitting too close to the kid, or the kid's in his lap and stuff, and it's like, what are you doing? But they play it off as he's like, well, this is weird, don't do this.
yeah, he's not always comfortable with that, but it's clear that the kid's kind of a touchy kid.
Yeah, the kid. Yeah. Well, what's clear is that I realized by the end of the film, the kid, when he was with his mom at the beginning, doesn't touch her, doesn't want her to touch her. He's very standoffish, and then throughout the film, where Nick becomes Uncle Nick, he becomes almost inseparable, wants hugs, wants all this stuff, because he probably felt rejected by his father throughout the entire, like he mentions how his dad didn't want him, and then he felt like his mom didn't want him either. So I can see how they tried to play that into it, and how the relationship grows in the film. And the kid, I'll say, was not a terrible kid actor. Usually kids can be bad in these kind of movies, especially for the time period. The kid pulled it off pretty well too.
Yeah, he was fine. I thought he was perfectly acceptable in the role. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong there.
And that's pretty much all I've got to say, other than that kid didn't do much after this. He was in the movie Warlock, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. Oh boy, that would have killed his career. And then after that, he was in 2 episodes of Hulk Hogan's Thunder in Paradise. So that basically finished off what career he might have had.
Oh man, I feel bad for him there. I mean, Ford Fairlane, okay, you can almost get away with. I've seen way worse movies, but
yeah, there are worse movies. But yeah, so that's all I've got to say. Unless you got anything else to say, did it live up to the bit of hype I gave it?
Yeah, I really liked watching it. I watched it with Darlene, my wife, and she enjoyed it.
So you did actually laugh at the parts I said, because I said, it's funny, but I was like, oh wait, I hope I don't give them too much hope that it's going to be like the laugh out loud movie.
No, I mean, we it takes a lot for us to like really laugh, but usually I'll just chuckle or ha, that was really good. Or
there's a couple.
There's a couple scenes in there.
The gun control scene, I actually laughed.
Yeah, the gun control scene. I actually really thought it was funny when in the casino when they he just whips out the sword, breaks the roulette table, and then the one guy like lifts it above his head like it's a giant trophy. They're cheating!
And then everybody starts to fight, and those 2 goons walk in, and they don't even know what's happening. They just see people fighting. They look at each other and smile and go, all right. And they start beating people up randomly. They don't even know what's going on.
Yeah. No, you're right.
I forgot. We forgot their deaths. We forgot to mention how they died.
Oh, go ahead.
So they end up killing each other.
Yeah.
Because in stupid ways. They get into an argument in a fight. The one brother shoots the other. He shoots the other brother, and then the other brother gets mad and shoots him in the head.
Yeah, just blows his head off. Well, yeah, shoots him right in the forehead. Really. Rutger Hauer, when the riot's going on, he takes cover underneath the roulette table, but then you see his hand pop up and then grab a whole handful of chips and drags it back down. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I would have done. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't really have anything else closing to say other than this. Like, if you're a listener of ours, you know that we know what we're talking about when it comes to action and action comedy, and this is one that I swear, like, almost nobody I've ever met has even seen it unless I've introduced it to them. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it should be seen by pretty much everybody that likes 80s action movies.
Oh yeah. This is classic 80s action, and fun 80s action, not just like a like Predator or something like that, where it's like more gritty. It's
not something like I don't have kids, so I don't know if I would recommend it to young. I saw it when I was like 6, but I saw it on TV where any of the really violent stuff would have been cut, and the little bit of swearing here and there might have been muffled. I would say if you've got a kid that's like 10 years old or older, they've seen worse.
Probably
nowadays. So like this can be a family movie night if you're all into. If you let your kids watch like Schwarzenegger movies or Bruce Willis movies. If you guys like watching Die Hard, if that's like a family movie for you, this could be one you can throw into your rotation.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, 80s R is different than like 2010 and 2020s R.
Yeah, this is not John Wick levels of inventive ways to murder people.
But believe it or not, I would actually say there are kids that John Wick, it wouldn't be a big deal. Because it's stylized and
like, I mean, for I would say for me and my family, like if your kid can understand the difference between reality and fantasy, this is an okay movie for you.
Sure. Otherwise, it gets real weird.
Yeah, so that's going to do it for this show, I guess.
Yeah.
Next time, maybe I'll track down one of the other films of his, and we can pair it with something else, so that just in case we have something to watch that we both end up not caring for, but maybe we'll have something else campy like this we can throw on afterwards as well.
Yeah, we need to still keep the Andy Sedaris stuff in our back pocket for when
and the only reason I'm holding off is that's one that I know Mike wants to be a part of for it. So they are evergreen. We've got our copies of them. You own it, I own it. He's got copies too. So
oh yeah, I have my big movie posters and T-shirts that have Andy Sedaris stuff on them. I love those.
Which I was going to say, I'm not sure if those are family friendly.
No. They are not. But they're family fun. Just not for kids.
Fun for the whole family. There's fun on the left, fun on the right.
Fun in the jacuzzi, because that's where the best kind of thinking gets done.
That's where all your thinking has to happen. That or in the shower, right?
That's right.
And you can't do it alone. You have to be lathering each other up, otherwise you can't think properly.
Of course.
God, those movies are great.
I love them. I love them so much.
All right, well, for both of us here This Week in Geek, I'm Alex, he's Aaron. We're going to say bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good night.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.